main thing they want to get off their chest.
Oh, new process.
It's gonna be
You know, it can weigh heavy on the heart.
I was at the soup kitchen just in case, and at 11:30, there were no Rotarians there yet.
At 11:31, there was one and a guest.
Very good. And but as you know, they were just crammed full of volunteers.
60 volunteers.
Yeah. Skip said, don't hang around if you don't.
No, I went in and repacked stuff and moved stuff around and
Good, thank you.
this and that, but I was late. So
RP.
anybody else got anything they want to get off their chest?
I drove by.
It's $1.
I drove by this way and I drove back by the other.
That's $2.
Why does that sound ominous?
Steve, me and you have it.
Right.
Right?
No, it's already happened.
That was last week.
That was last week.
So Ron, you're the one that missed it?
But Steve texted me, and that's one of the reasons I was there, but I was also there just to kind of scoop.
I guess I won.
Yeah, you were filling. for
Yeah,
Steve.
I went to get my son to fill in for him.
Yeah,
That's
you
what
were
it was.
volunteering. Kenny had volunteered to fill in for Steve.
My son was out of school and I put one of 20.
Especially him.
So, so go ahead. We'll talk about
If nobody else wants to fess up on anything, just save it up for next week.
Well, I didn't bathe till this morning.
You what? And how's that different any other time?
Oh dear.
To you, sir.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna start the list around for our bell ringing.
Okay.
I'll start up here with Rick's. Saturday, December 2nd, Walmart merchandise door from 9 o'clock to last time is 6 p.m.
Which Walmart?
December 2nd.
Hickory.
The one on
Highway
70.
70 across from CVCC, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a talent, Ron. You and Bill Biddle. That's the day the assistant governors all have to meet.
Can they meet at the,
I'd love to have
Walmart?
I'd love to have
Walmart.
Yeah, there's a McDonald's there. Y'all could have a meal.
Yeah, that might work well.
Be good for the budget.
Yeah.
You're all about the age to be
Roll
sitting
on
on
food
a dog
trucks,
having
huh?
coffee.
Yeah. Hardee's.
All right, we'll have a little bit of time for business after the program, so we'll got a couple of items to chat about then. But before we get to business, Bob Steiger would love to introduce our program.
I would. Please help me to welcome John Ellis. He was a longtime resident of Hickory City, Catawba County, and has moved since then to Charlotte. John, welcome.
Tyler just walked in the door here.
Just go ahead and get you 2 of it. Make sure you get 5 or something. There's one for the food and one for the...
Let him get by.
Good morning.
Good
morning. I'm here today to tell you about what I don't know. It's like anything else, the more you learn, the less you know. So I've had an interest in water purification, and particularly came aware to me as I was in Costa Rica a couple of years ago with the local church, and we saw half the people that came into the clinic, the medical group, were having GI problems from water in streams that flowed across pastures and so forth. So in a little bit, I'll be drinking some more water here from Lake Hickory as well. The ducks came up to me and they left their deposits when they went away, and I didn't have any food for them. So it's okay. How's it going, Phil?
It's great.
Phil's still living with
It's some
it,
of the
but
best water I've ever had.
I want. I'll pass the hat around a little bit for buying filters. But anyway, this is what it's about. It's about filtration. We'll have me going to Chiapas in February with a mission trip. I took a couple to Cuba a few weeks ago, and we took a couple of weeks ago. I went down with and met Ashley Wright, the former mayor's daughter. She lives down there with a mission destination business, a wedding destination business, and then went down the tubes in the last couple of months since Maria hit. So we were handing them out in the mountains and the boreals. We had handed out about 200 in 2 days. So because water next to power is the most critical item. But today I want to talk about Cuba and what I learned there about a month ago as we talk about what happens in the past and what might be possibilities for the future. Let me stand over here. If you look at it, what's the history of it? Prior to 1959, it was very well managed and going with some upheaval. 90 miles from Key West, it was very connected regularly, the service between Key West and Havana. As we see what happens here, there was large department stores. This is called Encantado, meant enchantment, and it was like the Blumenthal's that existed at that time. People lived comfortably. We look at, they had trams, buses, and higher standard of living. There was a Copacabana, clubs, entertainment. There was also the gambling aspect. And of course, we had the mob that was active in the country. So it had mixed blessings. It was entertainment for New York and some of the stars that would go there. And pictures in the Grand Hotel, people like Marlon Brando and others of that era frequently led to the places. Here it is today. When Obama came in, he implemented a relaxation, a cooperation, eliminated the 50-year-old ban that existed from 1959. This is the ship called the Phantom, a line that was part of Carnival, that was the first to have port calls there. Today, there must be a half dozen that call on there, even though I read yesterday that Alaska Airlines is discontinuing flights January 22nd from Los Angeles to Havana. So what initially developed now is starting to ratchet back. The initial person-to-person visits, you cannot go there and be a tourist. Your application for a visa has to fit in one of 12 categories, either cultural, exchange of ideas, educational, and obviously ours on a religious basis. What was signed in last week for commercial activity will not have any activities, any influence on some of the religious activities. If you remember, number 45 signed in last week some edicts in terms of hotels and business entities that develop the military directly. They own a number of hotels, so the effort there is to put a kibosh on those activities. Here we have the cars activities. We have the Grand Hotel, the first hotel in 50 years has been opened there in June of 2015. Here's the Havana Club being marketed more and more now. Well-known rum manufacturer as well as liquor. Interaction, socially, beach activities continue to develop. It has some nice beaches on the northern side. Some of them are recovering from Maria, but still it's a destination for particularly, what group do you think goes there more than any other? Canadians and British.
Mm-hmm.
Very much direct flights, surprising to me. But they're the #1 draw, and some of the Brits were trying to get out, and some backlash when Maria was hitting and the embassy wasn't calling. Cuba today, we landed in Havana, spent a couple of nights, and then we came over here to a place called Santos Espiritus. One of the baseball players, anybody remember the World Series? My favorite Dodgers went down the tubes. Quinn Hui, the outfielder, is from Cuba, and then the bad boy from Houston that made some indictment, he's from Santos Espiritus, and the one that made some indictments against the Far Easterner that was involved in some pitching for the Dodgers. What's the timeline? You remember the Santa Maria? What are the other two that Columbus had? You remember the nursery rhyme?
Nina and Pinta.
Nina and the Pinta, right. So Columbus was there. He stopped there on his way to America in 1492. Along the way, it prospered. And what happened? The Spanish originally didn't approve since they discovered slavery, but in the end, it prevailed because they needed lots of labor in order to harvest sugarcane. That was its main activity for years, is the harvesting and processing of sugarcane. And it prospered, and it grew very healthily. The U.S. acquired it after the Spanish-American War, and then we gave them their freedom in 1902. In the 30s and 50s, it became a very active area, the playground of New York and other places on the weekend. The mob prospered. It was a getaway. Beautiful weather, warm weather year-round, very prosperous in the mafia court. In 1950, another dictator, and the ups and downs of various dictators and nepotism and various activities, along with the mafia. So you can see that certain activities, and here's the bad boy up in the right corner, Fidel, that had the overthrow in 1959. And that was notorious as he had built activities in the southern portion, came in from Venezuela and overthrew the government, and has banned, among other things, all religions. Minister I met in Atlanta over the weekend that hosted us back a month ago, month and a half, and he said his father was a minister and he was banished to a prison for 6 months until they went through a reorientation. Communism repelled or denied the existence of Christianity at all. All of the non-Cubans religious leaders had to leave the country or be put in jail. So you can imagine that Castro in his days had a very much atheist attitude. We had also the assets were seized. American companies that were invested there, manufacturing and so forth. I worked for Procter & Gamble back in the 70s. They, making detergents, they had a plant that was one of triplets. I worked on the Mexico City expansion in the early 70s. The one in Havana was seized by Castro and converted into sugarcane processing. So you can see the various ideas. The government implementing controls, and we'll see in a few minutes what those controls were in terms of the key factors of production. The Bay of Pigs invasion. Under reputedly Kennedy, the U.S. apparently got cold feet and didn't follow through with its support of the rebels that came in from Miami. That's a story that you see legend in it, but it reinforced Castro's control of the country when the Bay of Pigs in 1961 held. What happened? Who's their friend? They had very little, no oil that's known today. There's some activities toward exploration, but it's very sketchy. Their biggest aid was the USSR, and they provided them not only with food, but low-cost oil below market price. So even during the 70s and 80s, it was very comfortable, shall we say. And in 1991, you hear of some of the people today that we met called a special period. And that's after the fall of the USSR, Russia decided, we don't want to support you guys. We can't afford it. With something like 90% of the oil came from Russia, from USSR at below market prices. A lot of the imports of foods, they cannot support the 11 million population. And guess what happened to the average monthly wage in 1993? 91 actually occurred. Preposterous to think your monthly wage goes from something like $180 to $20 a month. And that's what it is today. It's crept up a little bit. But it was dictated by the government. That just sounds preposterous, but I heard probably 100 times from various people that that's the average wage that we see there. The good news is teachers make as much as doctors down there today. The bad news is doctors make as much as teachers. So you can see the spiral continues in various ways. I'm sure there are some perks or benefits that go along for doctors. After that period, then he established a friendship with Venezuela and Chavez. The good news is Chavez had oil, and today they still have in Venezuela the largest oil reserves in the world, even though with the chaos in Venezuela today under Maduro, it's not working out as well because there's not much trust in the government. Those reserves still are in the ground untapped. But they became a partner, and what Cuba is well known for is their medical schools. In exchange for getting oil from Venezuela, they actually ship 40,000 doctors and nurses a year to Venezuela to actually provide the quid pro quo. And those doctors and nurses serve around the world. Even when Katrina hit about 10 years ago, some of you remember that in New Orleans, Cuba offered to send medical staffs to New Orleans. The U.S. government refused to accept them. They were coming at low prices or no cost. So Venezuela was a partner. And then what happened? That it fell apart again as Chavez dies in 2013. 2006, of course, Fidel died. His brother, who was less vocal, Raul, took over. So right now, Venezuela's in chaos. What do we relate to? We relate to the size and what does it encompass. The population, 11.4 million and declining. The whole time I was there for a week, I saw about 5 pregnant women. So you can imagine, as we saw downtown Havana, out across the Midlands, and it shows you that whatever it is, healthcare is free, and they're trying to manage wisely their population, much to the dismay of the government, I'm sure. The size of it, it's smaller than North Carolina, but spread out wider. So you can see the comparison there. They call themselves the shape of, anybody can guess what that shape conjures up in your mind? What animal? Alligator or crocodile. It has that rough shape they think about in terms of activity. What do they do? What do they achieve? Well, what about life expectancy of 79.5 years? How does that compare to the U.S.? It's at least equal. And you would say, how in the world can this poor country have a life expectancy? Part of it is managed health care. Free health care in advance. It's not when you get sick, because they have such an outstanding health care system that they actually have prevention ahead of time. And apparently it's working with the number of doctors. The government, my take on it is not communism per se today, as we think of North Korea and other countries, but it's totalitarianism. Someone absolute control and expecting performance. The average income, yes, $11.9 thousand a year per capita. According to their definition, only 5% of the population is at the poverty level. I don't know what that number is, but obviously they aren't buying too many cars, Bob, okay? So don't expect, when I show you the cars, you'll see that they're pretty innovative in terms of their activity. Currency, they have the CUP and the CUC. One is for the natives, because they want to control the exchange rate. If you come with a passport and want money, they'll give you fake money, because they want to control the level of the exchange rate. It's different. Natives get a lot more activities, a lot more buying power from their money than we do. And any outsider with a passport, and you want to convert Canadian dollars, British pounds, or whatever into the local currency, you'll be given fake money. And on the stores, they have different costs for product, depending upon whether you have CUCs or CUPs. But anyway, it's working. Here we look at Havana, population of about 2 million, 2.5 million, and this is the downtown area, skyscrapers, maybe 50 stories or higher, and this is their Broadwalk, similar to Charleston, South Carolina, where we have the Battery, and they call it this the MAH00089. And when we were there, it was shortly after Maria, and they had it policed off because they were cleaning it up from the sand that blew over the bulwark of the wall there. But it's a hangout, shall we say, about 7 kilometers long that people parade back and forth and so forth. What is it that communism has? The ideology that promotes ownership and the idealistic view that the government controls and allocates resources equally. What does it mean? The government controls. They have the major factors of production, banks, what printing presses there are, information. In order to actually get an internet card, I had to go to a hotel and buy an hour of time for $4.50 on the internet. It's controlled, communication, the TVs. So it controls the major factors. All the beef that's produced in the country is controlled by the government. If you own a cow, you better not kill it or you're subject to going to jail, because they produce it. Now, a lot of people have one in their backyard that they never know about. In a few minutes, I'll show you some of the activity. The government started a few years ago issuing private business licenses, from taxis to other people, motels. We stayed in a motel, and the woman had to actually see our passports because the government controlled. Even though we only were charged $25 a night, she had to see our passports and record down all the details on our passport, because she said the government inspector might be coming around to inspect her books. That's more than a CPA does today, right? So you can imagine she looked at all the details, charged us even with AC and hot water, we were only charged $25 a night. But she was happy to have the 6 of them. Small business license ended us, and they had 2 million. Wages are controlled, as you can see there. top to bottom. The essential foods that people have, there's a ration, and they showed me a ration card that they have monthly. I'll show you in a few minutes. Communications, visas are restricted, particularly now that we've had something occurring in the weather, the cicadas, or some anonymous sounds that have penetrated the U.S. Embassy that you've heard about, and also they control the flow of funds. What did I see? Well, first of all, Karl Marx, the founder of communism, says, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. So that's a philosophy based upon, sounds great in theory, but the implementation doesn't necessarily work. Surveillance. We know that London has something like 20,000 cameras judging, watching people, controlling their behaviors or whatever. Not controlling their behaviors, but monitoring the activity. I didn't see one down there. So whatever it is that people have, they don't have the money for one thing, but there's not the control. There's just a general police state that exists, even though there is a low level of crime that exists. I didn't see anybody that looked foreboding or threatening as we walked about the city of Havana, and certainly out in the rural areas it didn't exist. Freedom of movement. Everybody could go where they wanted. There was no question about where we went and basically what we did. So we'd go out in groups of 2 or 3 at night and travel, walk about, or whatever, stopped along the road. So it's relatively free. A cooperative work environment. All the people look at it were treated equally. So particularly in a few minutes you'll see that we were working on a particular church and everybody worked cooperatively. Everybody was equal at that level. I didn't see anybody, I don't think, that was born prior to 1959 when Castro took over. So none of them knew the environment that existed prior to that. So this is life for them. And living in a certain area, they don't expect anything else. This is their big plus, the education and health for everybody. Even $8 billion from sending people abroad. That's throughout South America, even in Africa, where the dollars are generated. The limitations that we exist. This was a 3-lane road here, and we traveled about 4 hours, and we saw something like 6 or 8 trucks the whole time. So the limitations that exist in terms of a train and a museum. I never saw a set of train tracks anywhere. So you can imagine the development, and certainly a building there with the sofas out on Front Street in Havana after Hurricane Katrina. Raw materials, very few if any. Coal, I understand there's some nickel. I saw it in the journal, I never saw any plants. No other raw materials to my knowledge. Sugar cane is the main export product. It's exported and refined and exported in sugar. Other activities that we saw were tobacco. They still alleged to have the best cigars in the world. But that was about it that we saw in turn. Restricted communications, and you can see per 1,000 residents how many people have internet today. Is somewhat controlled in terms of what people have. Limited technology, it's not there. Certainly not a Silicon Valley that allows the development of new and improved products. Healthcare is probably their biggest plus, and they use that quite extensively. And inefficient and obsolete distribution. Since it's primarily a port of Havana, how do you get things out to other areas? And when people go to holiday, they get a visa to go to Miami or someplace, they come back loaded up with merchandise, as much as they can get past customs when they came in. We took in 200 toothbrushes, and customs guy says, why so many toothbrushes? Well, we're giving them to the kids. He said, that's too many. He said, but I'll let it go. So you can imagine some concern among government employees about, maybe on direction obviously, that these are commercial products that will be sold. That's part of it. So there's always this game playing that people go abroad and come back with lots of material. How do we get products out? And running a small business there is very difficult in terms of having the resource. Another area, energetic and disciplined. If you think Latinos work actively in the local landscaping and other business, I'll put a Cuban up to work twice as fast and twice as hard, because they're very much motivated to improve, implement, but they're largely untrained. The government has restrictions, as I've just said, procedures, and what can and can't be done, how people can behave. I never talk politics with anybody there. We were pretty well verboten to talk about politics. It was just off limits. And I don't know whether anybody I would have talked to would have known anything about what was going on in Havana. If you don't know, because of communication, you certainly are expected to not talk about it. Freedom of speech is the #1 issue that we hear frequently, particularly coming out of Washington, in terms of our restriction of traders. What are these people that are in jail? I don't know. Probably, maybe they are there. But from my access, I never heard or saw anything about it, but I'm sure it exists. The infrastructure, the highways existed. How much hasn't changed? One main highway goes from east to west, and that's the main communication. A few tourists that was there, only modern car I saw was a Mercedes that was traveling about 100 miles an hour going from east to west. No police out or anything, very few cars that people have. Hitchhiking. This young lady stood out on the road, she got a ride pretty quickly. Hitchhiking is legal. If you work for the government and you have a government vehicle, you have to pick up hitchhikers, legally demanded. You wouldn't have to be legal to pick her up, I'm sure. So anyway, she got a ride shortly after. Electrical grid is worse than Puerto Rico, if you can think about it. But solar is slowly being implemented as they're able to get the funds in. In a country like Puerto Rico or Cuba, the sun is out all the time. And it's not like here with cloud cover or smog or whatever. It is bright. Temperature's not too high, but boy, that sun is bright. And Bob, your head would be burned in about a half hour. So even I burn. I rarely burn with my dark skin. But anyway, solar would be great there because it rains occasionally, a spurt during a half hour or so during the day. It's a little bit humid, but never up in the 90s or anything at least the time. Airports, modern. This is one. I'm sure this is a show and tell. The visitors came in. We cleared customs there, and probably a third of the time it takes if any of you come back in Charlotte from out of the country. You know how long those lines are. So it's a show place, I'm sure. In terms of trains, any pre-existing routes. Mr. Hershey out of Hershey, Pennsylvania was very active back in the 30s in developing some train routes, but they were more show and tell than anything else. I don't know why Hershey went there, but he had a little place called Hersheytown that was a show and tell north and east of Havana. The ports exist, and I'll show you in a few minutes. This is Mariel, M-A-R-I-E-L, which is about 50 kilometers west of Havana. And it's like some of the places we have in free trade zones here in North Carolina, the one over in the eastern part of the state. Near Kinston's doing okay. But here they're trying to develop the future in terms of ports and so forth. It remains to be seen depending on restrictions and dollars available and reliability of the investments. Here we look at water and sewage, and obviously that's pretty bad, but it's protected, shall we say, reasonably with a coexisting system. Here's some of the lives today. All love their cars, and they're able to take them. And this one, what year is that, Bob?
That's a 56, 7.
No, I think that's a 49.
Is it?
Sure. That one, 55 has a longer shape, I believe it
But
is.
it's probably got a diesel engine in it.
Well, what it is, they probably, or some of them, they told me to replace them with diesels. And boy, are they good mechanics. They're tinkers, and I'll show you in a few minutes, as they're like. Two boys over there on the right side, they were throwing, there's a hole in the wall right here, and there's a can in there. And they were picking up rocks and throwing it at the can. Their form of playing basketball, and every time he hit the can that was in this hole, it'd be a ding, and they'd give each other high fives. That's the activity. Nearby, 3 girls were here up on this wall, and we asked them, how old you are, 10 years, something like that. How about the water? You go swimming in that river. No, it's dirty. But it was clean during the hurricane. We want another hurricane. That was their theory. Out of the Art Linkletter said, out of the mouths of children, unusual states. Here's one of the pastimes, playing chess down on the city square, or down near the markets. The beach there is so-so. You can see some of the debris that had washed up during Maria, and it was being left there. Eventually it would be cleaned up. Some of the life today, important music, dance, the cha-cha, the samba, and other dances are developed there. We have baseball, and many of the players look forward to trying to make it to the big time. Easy on the street corners, it's the #1 sport, whereas other places in Latin America, soccer is the #1 sport, but down there, baseball. Today, they can go directly from Cuba to the U.S. with assigned authorization from the government. Of course, the government takes a tax on it. But instead of having to go through Dominican Republic or Haiti to the U.S. Or Mexico, they can come directly, like a number of players that you see on the Major League Baseball teams. Some of the dilapidations that we see, some of the people, cars that didn't make it, Bob, still in maintenance, right? And here we have some of the streets that are taking place. Here's what takes place here. Let me just show you this one. Various entertainments. These people were on the stilts for at least an hour. This is Old Havana on a Saturday morning. That's part of their dance routine, and they didn't drop down after 5 minutes on these 6-foot stilts. But that's a dance routine as they were going about their ritual, and they were collecting money from people, visitors or locals that were out on the morning. You can see very animated, very active. So Bob, that would give your legs a good workout if you felt like standing on concrete all day. That would be a little more rigorous. So, very active, very much involved in their own style of music, the Caribbean style. So, also we see here music, people playing guitars in various areas. Kids, and this is some kids doing the cha-cha. Up here, these same boys later on were playing soccer. They were kicking around, but we looked closely at the soccer ball. It was flat, but they were still kicking it around. So you can see they do with what they have. Here's some of the people, and this is very educational for me. The Taínos. These were the natives that settled, that were there before Columbus. And most of those were banished or didn't survive. Today they're the Europeans. And the mestizos or mulattoes. These are the intermarriages. And today there's a large number of these, probably predominant, and a few on the other end. What I take away from this, we are still fighting issues in the U.S. of racism, and particularly with the white supremacists today. They solved their problem 200 years ago. Why are we still fighting this battle? When they work together, they worship together, they play together, without any differences between the people. So I take away a lesson from both Cuba and Puerto Rico, that we're behind some other countries of the world because we haven't come to grasp with those realities. Here's some of the resilience, how the people have hung in there. The port in Havana there, because they don't have the trade that existed 20 years ago, 15. And some of these ports are left idle and falling into decay. Here's the grocery store that we went into, expecting to see something. Somebody was interested in cigars and wandered in there. Took pictures. This is your convenience store with primarily household products, detergents, shampoo, and other products. What do you see there, Bob?
Empty shells.
Empty shelves. You either buy it or not. It's your tough luck. You need some shampoo for your hair, Bob.
Not much.
Not much. Well, you did a long night.
Bottle will last you a while, huh?
Okay, yeah, it'll last you. Here's a young lady on that umbrella, by the way. It's a very attractive nude that she had on. But two of them riding on out with an umbrella. A lot of umbrellas because it's very hot. Not hot, just a bright sun every day. Two people there that are creative with their umbrella. Anybody see what's on those boxes? S-O-L. What is that?
Here.
I don't know what it is. Slang.
It's the word for
And look.
sun.
I'm sorry?
It's the Spanish word for sun.
Sun is a beer that's manufactured. There are in Mexico imported. Shows you how creative. And here's what happens to some of the columns of buildings that were built a couple hundred years ago. And slowly with the seawater nearby and the pollution from these old cars. Even though these cars have been around, they're still polluting heavily. You combine the sulfur along with the seawater, you get sulfuric acids. and it's slowly eating away at some of the cost. Not much money to restore or preserve these. So we see the activities. Here's some cars. Bob, this is your alley. What do you think of those names? You recognize any of those names? Here we look at one called the Polski.
Poland and Yugoslavia.
Polski, where do you think that was made?
Probably in Poland.
Poland.
Yeah.
It's a takeoff on the Fiat. When Poland, during the war, during the times of Russian occupation, USSR, they had a license from Fiat, and they made their own version of it, the Fiat 125, does that ring a bell? And that was nice looking. That one had been restored or whatever, and it has a little logo there. But it's a nice name that sticks with you. The Lada, anybody heard of that?
Yugoslavia.
It's Russian. The Russian car, and now, of course,
That leaks oil every place.
I'm sorry?
Russian diesels that leak oil every place.
Absolutely. It's a car that looked beat up. That one there I took a picture of. It was used by the government employee to do something. Somebody said it was worth $10,000. So you can imagine if it runs, it's worth something.
You know why they had heated rear windows, the Ladas?
I'm sorry?
You know why they had heated rear windows?
Oh,
To keep
really?
your hands warm when we're pushing them?
Yes. Yes. Very good. And there's the one over on the right here. What does that look like? A luggage rack. Bob, that's made from rebar. It's on the top of a Volkswagen. The guy, a creative welder, had taken rebar and built his own luggage rack on the top. So you can see we had created. Here's one called the Geely. Anybody familiar with that? It's the people that own Volkswagen today, not Volkswagen, Volvo. And it's been owned by the Chinese that are introducing products, and this is relatively new, but it shows the influence in the country. The Janus car, anybody heard of that? Janus is from Greek icons, and what does it mean?
Extended smart car?
Smart car?
Forward and back.
It has two faces. January comes from that. Looking forward, looking back. That car, you aren't sure which way is the front and the back. But the Germans produced it back in the 70s, a couple of years. Here's my two favorite cars here. Particularly, Bob, there's your car. There's your 55 Chevrolet. And this is one older. But the colors of these cars really appeal to me. Oh, that's the wrong one. There's the one. Purple and orange. Wow. Bob, any explanation required?
No, that's fine.
Do you understand?
Yeah, you'll
Okay.
get it over your head.
Yes, okay. But here's foods that are important. And there's one food that's very important there. You eat it every meal. And there are the three of them up in the top there. What are they? Plantains. And those are three different types of plantains. One is the overripe that squishes in your hand, the ripe, and the green. And they cook all three of them in different ways. Plantains are probably the most frequent food. Here we have pork, and because the government has some controls over it, they ask, how did you afford pork for us? It fell off the truck. So anytime I eat a meal, they have a black market, of course, for American guests, and we were bringing money down to donate for their cause. It fell off the truck. So if you ever have a problem explaining to an employee why something costs too much, tell them I couldn't get it falling off the truck.
Bob has a lot of stuff off trucks.
Does it?
I
Okay.
grew up like that, everything fell off the truck.
Yeah, well, they use it very frequently down there. Wheels. Here we have some avocado, and this is the form of pineapple that we looked at. Very interesting foods. Here's plantains again. It looks like chips or something. Here's more plantains here, cooked in a different way. And here's something a little bit different. Anybody heard of guava? It has seeds in it. Interesting. I didn't like the seeds. I take off a watermelon from the whole thing. Here's a nice table setting. Guess what that is? That's your monthly ration of foods. You have a card that you buy at the government store, and that's what you get monthly, Bob. You're going to die with that one, unless you could find something falling off the truck every day. Yeah, there's a card. If you were pregnant, Bob, you could get some extra food, or sick as a child. I don't think you fit in one of those. So it's easy going to die. But that's the government ration, and it's controlled monthly that we see. Here's the challenges of life. Cars, bathrooms that we look at. Very humble, very tight, if it's available. Here we have water. Water is delivered. They don't have municipal delivery, generally speaking, and that's a truck that pulls a tanker around each month. And if you subscribe to it, they will pump it up to the top of your building, and the top, and that's called a cistern, CISTERN, PRN, like a tank up there, and then it's gravity fed down to the house. Water is very, very scarce. And people on the construction sites cut the hose off. They didn't leave it running while they were hand mixing the concrete. They kept it running. So here's education, something they're very proud of. Everybody in the 3 different levels of school dresses alike throughout the country. It's not a matter of local vote or what do you think. It's mandated. You can see a guy that outside our hotel walking to school. There were no cars going to school. Everybody walked. Or some of them rode bicycles in the community. 3 girls there, different eras, and over to the right, a high school. 3 dress codes for each, 1 for each of the levels. Here's children, and you can see the importance today. I am Fidel. I am Fidel. I am Cuba. I am revolution. Revolution that we look at. Okay, moving right along. Here's Fidel exists. Here's along the highway. You can see various activities. My favorite pastime, riding a tractor. He wouldn't let me drive it. I didn't have a Cuban license, he said, so I couldn't drive his tractor, but he shook hands. City Square. Who has the nicest trucks in the country? The electrical service, the Duke Power equivalent. They were going east to replace the power poles that had been wiped out. They were going casually. The guy in the front had air conditioning. He had the windows up. Everybody else had the windows down. But new truck. Here's what happens today in religion. Catholicism is on the decline. Atheism, agnosticism, from the days of Castro still is flattening, and Protestants are growing. Here's what happened with church. Fidel in 1992 said, I've had a change of heart. I've gone from atheism to secularism. And he allowed churches to start building. This particular faith here, 1992, this particular group has grown to over 450 today. This is, just want to share with you, regardless of what members of the groups you are, I saw this in a trash can right outside there. A Lions Club from Northern Virginia, eyeglasses. Whatever cause you undertake from time to time to promote around the world, just recognize somewhere it probably shows up. And I took a picture of that. That particular location apparently had received a shipment of used eyeglasses. The church that we were at, you can see the rebar here that we were working on, the various activities that people were involved in. The people of all shades of brown enjoying the religion together. Various people that are involved. Here's a guy working very actively, pouring concrete here. What's he using that piece of rebar for? To hold the boards together. What do you think that is? He invented his own 6 lamp. Made it work. So it was effective. What is it today? You can see the ban is questionable. That's up to you as to whether it's helped the U.S. or hurt Cuba. They're still striving, even though the people are paying the price. What's expected after Raul retired? Not a lot, unless something dramatically changed. In the absence of the U.S., somebody else is going to jump in there. And this is equipment that was loading some destruction of concrete over on the beach. What country is that product from, do you think, from the name? Oh, it's a truck? China. Absolutely. Heavy duty, look-alike for a cat. And here's what happened a couple of weeks ago. Caterpillar is the first company in the U.S. to get distribution rights over at MAH00089. So they're opening the doors as long as it's not approved, and Caterpillar will have a presence in the country. What happened in a country without natural resources? They're going to hurt. Trade is difficult. You can't get people to trade with you if you don't give something to them. People are indigent and complacent because they're tolerant of what it is. They live with the condition. Religions are thriving. They have a hope for the future, even though somewhat. Let me switch to Puerto Rico. I was there. Here's the water I drank there. You wouldn't want to drink that, Phil. That was out of a mud pump. Here's handing out these Uzima filters that we were. This is Ashley Wright on the left, drilling holes in the bottom as we were installing the filters. And there I am out in the countries, up in the mountains, handing out buckets. We were very happy. And that's typical. Every day you go out, poles and poles are broken. Get up in the morning, you go somewhere, it takes twice as long because 90% of the stoplights were out. What if you had to get across Hickory and those stoplights were out? At every intersection there was negotiation of people getting across. And here's something I sent to Bob, you can send on, Ashley sent me yesterday, what is Puerto Rico today? And Bob can send that out to you if he can share it with you. It's just her story updating that there's a positive attitude and a hope, but people are leaving Puerto Rico. It was in my cab driver taking me to the airport, said there were 100,000 have already left. By Christmas, they expect 200,000 to leave. So a lot of them will not be coming back. So the population is probably going to be down close to 3 million if something's not done. Yes, sir.
How many Americans did you see there?
Very few.
Because they said a lot of them in recent years have moved down there for the cheap cost of living.
I actually lived in a 12-unit condo. She was the only one there. All the other 11 had gone back to the States because they weren't willing to put up with no electricity, no water. So a lot of people, yes, maybe a lot of Americans, but hey, I've got somebody in the U.S., a family or a friend, I'm going to go back until it gets better. Yes, sir.
When you pass that heavily sedimentation type liquid into your filter, doesn't it destroy the life of the filter?
What we do is we turn it upside down, a syringe, and you back flush. Back flush. With clean water. This will work 5 years. And we took down 100, I don't know, we took down about 300.
Activated carbon?
What's the cost of that?
That filter is $30. It'll last
For the
5
small
years.
pores.
We had some people paying for them locally, donation. The biggest shortage is buckets. Home Depot actually bought 500 of them. She was early enough, and now they're sold out. So I've got buckets I can get for $1.50 from a company that makes them for Lowe's. Rejects, colored, overruns. We can't get them into Cuba because the ports are all tied up with military. And they've got containers going in, but none of them are coming out. So it's a catch. They don't want empty containers coming back, like trucking companies with backhauls. Yes?
John, you mentioned the emphasis on education. What, did you get a sense for the quality of education? And number two is, if somebody gets a good education, a pretty smart kid, what kind of options do they have when they graduate?
They leave. Unless they go into healthcare or some other. If the visa allows, and that's a tough area now, articles have, U.S. and Cubans both have had a quid pro quo, you know, a Faustian, a dueling deal. We cut back, and now there's a waiting list to get out. So I think the education is built upon solid fundamentals. You don't have much back talk. The video I didn't show you shows the principal outside in the morning at 7:30 lecturing to everybody, and they're all standing at attention, giving the Cuban flag without anybody kneeling, shall we say, and he gives the orders for the day, and they walk into school. So it's in control, and the parents support it with whatever. Yes, sir.
What teaching language is Spanish, but you didn't have any trouble communicating, so a lot of English too?
Well, English starts in something like the 3rd grade. Instruction, yes. The younger generation is very affluent. The older ones that may have been years ago, not as fluent, but most of them have enough awareness of what goes on in Cuba that they can get by. But the younger generation, no problem when it starts at the 3rd grade. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Wish we had more time. They run us out because the site meeting is still not quite complete. This is speaker we give out. Wayne Honeycutt makes those.
Wow, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I finished all my work.
Okay, anybody wants to take some, I'll take some, hand it out here to you. Y'all remember.
How refined is that?
They may though.
That is, it's produced to help See what the work every earlier this year. So get something down to 0.1 micron.
Real quick.
What's their fresh water source? Lakes, rivers, wells, what?
I think it's primarily underground and some ponds internally. I didn't see rivers extensively, but there are some collections of water inland. It's pretty scarce. That's why any construction we saw there, they bend the hose when they're not using the mix of cement. So it's scarce. Particularly the quality coming out of this is much, out of here is much better than the municipal system. Sure.
Have they ever looked at desalination plants, you know?
They can't afford it, I'm sure.
But you'd think as a country or something that would be
Absolutely.
beneficial.
We saw desalinization in Puerto Rico. The Navy was out on the beach, small unit, a couple of Navy guys lounging as these units were running, and pumping into a bladder. a truck would come in and pump the water out of a bladder and then take it out to areas where people would then come with their buckets. That's in Puerto Rico. I don't know how long the Navy's going to be doing that. But
So we're pretty much out of time, but just a quick update for you. There has been, we've had 2 requests for funds. One of them $100 to go to the hunger walk that was, that happened in the eastern part of the county. And your folks, the 5 folks in the committee all agreed that that would be something that would be good for us to fund. The other Rotary clubs have all agreed to kick in $100 for that. So that's where we are on the committee looking at that. There also was a request from Kenny to provide $500 for Camp Corral. I think I get that word straight. Camp Corral, 2 R's makes it Corral. This is a program, if you were here for the meeting from
Golden Corral.
yeah, Golden Corral, help me with the fellow's name.
Jim Hildebrand?
Yes, Hildebrand. He talked to us about a camp that is available for children of disabled veterans or veterans who were killed in action. And the request is for the club to provide $500 to provide a scholarship for one youngster to go to that. And the 5 folks who reviewed that also recommend that we fund that. So, in the couple of seconds that we have remaining, do we have any discussion on the $100 going to the walk to end hunger in eastern Catawba County? Or I will entertain a motion to provide that money.
So moved.
Second. Is there any discussion on that? You all happy with what the committee is recommending? Then all in favor? Aye. And opposed? Then we have the $500 for Camp Corral. Again, the committee, the 5 folks have reviewed that and all see it aligning with our both our interest in veterans and education, because of course it is an opportunity for these children to be educated in that time that they're there. Once again, I'll entertain a motion to approve on that.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on that? Do you all want any issues with that? Do you want to go with what the committee has recommended? This is your chance to speak up. No concerns? Then I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
I need the information, please, for
Yes.
those 2, so I
Yeah,
get the checks in.
We'll do that,
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah.
Phil, from a protocol standpoint, I think the committee's recommendation is the motion in itself.
Okay,
And so when it comes from a committee, that's the recommendation, that just needs to be seconded.
you are absolutely
Just
correct.
need to
Thank
be
you.
active.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to see the charter group from 17 years ago, I've got that picture here.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how folks have changed. Yes, sir.
I just want to remind the group that we did indeed write a grant request for district designated funds. We wrote it for $3,000. At some point in time, we will have to give Rise Against Hunger, the old Stop Hunger Now group,
Right.
the $3,000. When we've done that, documented it, and submitted, we'll get $1,500 of that back. But it is in the offing in the spring.
Yeah, in this case, I was going to ask. And this,
category.
will this be,
Media, district designated funds. I'm sorry.
will this be at the Episcopal Church again?
Yeah, the St. Albans
St. Albans.
is hosting once again.
Okay. Yeah. Not a great opportunity
Yeah.
to be involved
And then, of course,
in
it's
that
Bill
pathway
there.
process. Yeah.
Who's got the bail sign up?
It's right here.
How'd we do? That's-
You're on your own.
You're the boss.
We have 9 o'clock, McClellan, 10, Rick, 11, Dan, noon, Phil, 1, Gavin. I'm not leaving you in or out this time, so you're not gonna get hung up. Ron, 2, Jim, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are open. I'll take any of those if I'm in town, but at this point in time, I'm out of town.
Well, we got another week.
Okay.
We don't meet next week, and then the 29th, we got another meeting before then, so.
Yes, good point. We are not meeting next week because of Thanksgiving. Anything else?
Well, let me just remind you that water, clean water worldwide is the goal for,
Rotary,
so keep that in your mind, please.
One of our 6 focus areas.
That's right.
Think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? What a soft touch.
It's a little early in the morning for this.
You just emailed me that.
Bob, you finally figured out how to put a link up on in an email.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I was sitting in a cottage in a place called Caranac on the Dordogne, an impossibly pretty place, and I thought, this is just too pretty, I need to see Bob's face on the video. But I couldn't do it at that point, that was when the link didn't work.
Good, man, how are you?
Doing all right.